This video is going to cover using Turbo with Devise. What I mean by this is we'll have the ability to create separate Turbo streams depending on if you are the user who created something, another logged in user, or someone who's not logged in at all. So in this case, in this panel on the left here, I have a window where the user is not logged in, but they can still see the like counter. And if I like this with one of my accounts or with my other account, you see the number increment or decrement. The other thing you notice is that when I like this with, let's say, the account on top, the like and unlike button changes, but it doesn't change in the other browser. So we have different streams going on for different pieces of information. And the one thing you're probably noticing if you've tried to use Devise before is we aren't running into this issue that says Devise helper methods and missing warden exception, blah, 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 blah. Based on this GitHub issue, I managed to piece together what we were supposed to do without any help from this comment. But at the bottom, there was some helpful information which covered how to create multiple broadcasts, including to private channels, so logged in users, or to a specific user with a user GID. So we're going to be taking a look at all of that today in what's sort of become a bit of a Turbo crash course. The last thing I want to add is we also have broadcasts for new tweets. So if I create a new tweet here, you'll see the new tweet gets added to all three windows where we can like and unlike just like we did previously. So that's the other thing we're going to be taking a look at. If we come into this and we edit this tweet and we change the words to say, I just changed this, you'll see that this updates in the other windows. I can delete this tweet and it goes away just like that. I know it's a bit of a long intro, but that's just because I wanted to cover everything that sort of went into this video. Now, the first thing we're going to do in this application is set up our DB. For this, we're going to add everything that we need just at once because the database really doesn't have anything to do with Turbo. So we're going to start by adding Devise. So I'm going to say bundle add Devise to add the Devise gem. We're then going to run a Rails G Devise :install command. Then we'll run a Rails G Devise user command to generate the user model. We'll then create our tweets by running a Rails G scaffold tweets. And we'll give each tweet a body of type text. The next thing we need to do is give the ability to like these tweets. So we have a user model, we have a tweet, we now need a join table. So we'll say Rails G model. We'll create a model called likables. We'll give each likable a user :belongs _2 and a tweet :belongs _2. And we'll go ahead and we'll run that. It'll change it to singular, I guess. The last thing that I want to do is we can just add the user to the tweet. So I'll say Rails G migration, add _user _2 tweets, and we'll say user :references. After all of that, we can run a Rails DB :migrate command to migrate the database, which will add all of our tables. We'll then go ahead and exit out of the full screen, and I'll start the server just so we can see what we're working with. So we already have the /tweets route. Let's go ahead and let's open up our routes.rb file. And in here, we're going to add a root, which is going to be tweets index. The other thing we'll need for the likes is we're going to need a post to the like /ID, which we'll say is to the tweets controller and the like action. And we'll do this as like _tweet. And this will give us something along the lines of like _tweet _path for the tweet. Once we're done with that, we're now done with the routes for this application. Now let's go ahead and let's change the index page. So let's come into app, views, tweets, index.html.erb. And I'm going to full screen this for a second. We have this H1 right here. The first thing we want to do is check if we're signed in. So if we are the current user, we don't want to say the tweets. We just want to say the current _user.email. If we're signed in, we also want to display something that we're going to call the @user_GID. And we'll go ahead and we'll create that right now. This is coming from our tweets controller. So we'll come into the tweets controller index action. We'll set this equal to current underscore user dot to underscore GID underscore param. We're only going to do this if the current user exists. So if we're logged in, we'll do this. Now, the other thing I'd like to do here is I'd like to just render our tweets form. So we'll say render tweets slash form. We'll do a tweet and we'll say tweet.new. Otherwise, we're not logged in and we'll have to do something else. In this case, we'll just say, please sign in. And we're not going to render anything. Instead, we'll do a link to sign or log in to tweet. And this will be the new user session. And that allows us to set up the basic header for this app. So I'll go ahead and I'll save this. I'll refresh the page and it'll yell at me for user session. So instead we need this to say, this is the new user session path. I guess my brain thought one thing and my hands thought something else. We can now log in by going to this route, but just in case we mess anything up, let's create a DB seed because I usually find this easier than creating multiple accounts. So for this, we're going to create a test@case.com account, which is going to look like this. And then we're going to create a john@doe.com account, which is going to look like this. We're then going to create some test data, which is just going to be a call to 10.timesDo a tweet create, where we also give the tweet a user. We can go ahead and we can save that. The next thing to do is to come into the tweets controller right here where we have the @tweet. We'll just get rid of this respond to, and instead we'll just do @tweet.user equals current user @tweet.save. We're not here for the validations. We're just here to create some basic functionality that we can then explore with Turbo. I'm now going to go ahead and stop the server. We'll run a Rails db:/seed command to create that data. And we actually have to add the user to the tweet. So let's go ahead and let's come over to our models, our tweet.rb, and in here we'll just do a belongs to the user. And we can do a Rails db:/drop, then we'll do a Rails db:/migrate command, and then we'll do a Rails db:/seed command again. After all that's done, we can run a Rails S to refresh the page. We now have all of our tweets displaying, and then we can go ahead and log in to test@case.com with a password of password. Now that we've logged in, we can see that we have the email displayed as well as this user GID. Now this is just a unique way to identify the user. You can think of this almost like the user ID. We're just playing around with it a little bit. Now let's go ahead and let's add a button here that allows us to like a tweet. In order to do that, we're going to have to come into both the tweet and the user.rb. Inside of the tweet, we're going to have to add a block that says this has many likables. I'm going to full screen this again. So the tweet has many likables that are dependent destroy, and it's going to have many likes through likables, which is what we called it up here. And it's going to be from the source user. So when you call tweet.likes, it's going to show you the users that have liked the tweet. We can then come into the user.rb model. And in here, we can do the inverse of what we just did. So this will has many, and it'll be likables, which are dependent destroy. This, of course, needs a colon in front of it. And then it's going to has many liked tweets instead of likes like we had in here, which I'll move down here. So instead of saying in the tweet how we had has many likes through likables source user, here we're doing has many liked tweets through likables source is tweet. So it has liked tweets, which is what we're calling it in the user, through likables, which we has many right here, and the source is the tweet model. So when we call like tweets on a user, it'll show us the tweets that the user has liked. Now we can come into the tweets controller. Now in the tweets controller, what we'll need is the ability to actually like a tweet. So for this, we're going to say def like because we already created that route. We then need to find the tweet by the params ID. We can then do a @like equals, and this is actually incorrect right here. What we can instead do is we can just say current underscore user dot like this tweet. And then we can, we don't actually need this @like.save. What we can do is we can like the tweet. We'll have to refresh the page. We can, of course, redirect to the tweet's URL if we want to. I guess we'll leave it like that for now. But if we come into the user.rb, we can create a method down here that's going to be def like, which takes in a tweet. And all it does is it says if liked underscore tweets dot include the tweet, then we want to do liked underscore tweets dot destroy this tweet. Else we want to do liked underscore tweets with 2 angle brackets for the tweet, which is the same thing as doing like tweets dot push for this tweet. It's just adding it to the list. Once we've done that, we now have the liked tweets being created or destroyed inside of our user model. And you'll see why I'm doing this in the user.rb in a second. You could, of course, do this in the controller just fine. It's no big deal. The one place you probably don't want to do this in, though, is inside of your likable model. The reason why you don't want to do it in your likable model is because when we do the broadcast destroy, it's going to delete the likable before it can then send out to everyone which tweet was just unliked so they can change their numbers. So you want to keep it outside of the thing you're destroying in this case, which is why I just put it in the user model so it's a bit easier to understand what's happening. Again, I'm not here to teach you how to organize your code. I'm just trying to teach you how this works. So now we have the model set up, the controller set up. The only thing we still have to set up is the actual like button itself. In this case, we're going to come into our views. We're going to create a new folder and we'll call this likes. And inside of this likes folder, we're going to create a file and call this underscore, and I'll say private underscore button.html.erb. What we're going to do in this is we're just going to say the like underscore text is equal to like underscore status question mark unlike, or it's going to be like. We can then do a link to the like text with a like tweet path, which is what we created in the controller earlier, that has an ID of tweet.id. And it's going to have a data. Actually, we'll leave that off for now. We'll just leave it like this. And then below this, I'm actually going to render another partial, which I'm going to say render likes / like count. Tweet is going to be tweet. The reason why we're rendering a second partial here is because it helps with Turbo, but it's also just a good way to separate your code in case you want this counter somewhere else. So I'm going to say this is the like count.html.erb. Inside of this one, we're just going to do a pluralize for the tweet.likes.count, which is going to have the word like in it. So now we have this private button. This, of course, needs to be rendered for each tweet. So in this section right here, we have this p.body. We'll just leave this alone for right now. And instead, what we'll do is we'll do a render for the likes / private underscore button, which takes in a tweet, which is going to be the tweet. And then it also takes in a tweet status or a like status, which in this case is just going to be the like status, which will pass in from one level up. So we can then come into our index. Instead of doing this render tweet, we'll do render tweets / tweet, which takes in a tweet that is the tweet. I'm getting a little tired of saying tweet. It has a like status of current underscore user dot liked question mark for the tweet. And then come into our user because now we have to create that method. It's going to be def liked for the tweet. And all we're going to do is check if the liked tweets includes the tweet. And it's going to return true or false if it does or if it does not. If we now come over here and refresh the page, hopefully not everything's broken. But if I now click the like button, it'll tell us no route matches for the get of like /1, which means this probably needs to be a button to, is my guess. We'll come back here and refresh, click the like button, and there we go. So now if we like this thing, it'll do whatever we need it to. But okay, this is clearly redirecting us, and I clearly structured the code in a specific way. So why did I structure it the way that I did? Well, intuitively, when we go to create an application like this, you're going to be very tempted inside of the private button right here to not pass in whether this has been liked or not. So don't pass in the like status from the tweet partial, which comes from the index page. You would obviously start by just saying, has the current underscore user dot liked this tweet? And you would actually just take this and put it right here. You could also do something like, if current user dot liked tweet is true, then do this, otherwise do that, etc. The issue with this is the current user is clear to you in this context because it's the person that just clicked the button. But what you have to remember, and this is sort of what I think all those tickets were talking about, is that the current user is clear to the person who clicks on the like button. But if I open this in another tab and I go to localhost port 3000, this tab doesn't know what the difference is between this current user and this current user if this one was to sign in. So when you click the like button, it goes into the user model, which in this case is the current user. And then it says, I like the thing. And then you go out to your, let's say your like button, you try to broadcast it. You can update the counter by doing that, by just grabbing the like counter. But how do you differentiate between the user that just liked this, who now needs to change the text to say like versus unlike, and the other user who is just sitting here on the page? You have to broadcast the actual user that you did that to, because otherwise you would have to refresh this every time the user 2 has, anytime they receive an update, they then have to check to make sure that they're not the ones that like this, which is incredibly inefficient. So the way that the ticket addresses this, that I talked about earlier, is they create a separate channel for the current user versus just any signed in user. And the way it works is you have a current user channel that you try to broadcast to. So when you come into the user, they'll try to broadcast to both the current user channel and the all users channel. And what you do is you broadcast to the all users channel just the like counter, and you broadcast to the current user channel the specific text that it needs, which in this case comes from wherever we had it in the index page. So the reason why we're doing it all the way up here is because this happens outside of the turbo partial that you're trying to render, where it's going out to everyone. So up here, we can do all the logic we need to, where we check what the current user's email is, or their GID or whatever, or if they've liked the tweet. That's all a really long-winded way to say that we need to sort of get really comfortable with how these turbo streams work. So the first thing to know is you have two different types. Inside of your controller, you have the ability to render a turbo stream for a private user. So in here, when we do this like method, what we can do instead is we can do a respond to do format end. Then we can do a format.turbo_stream do end. Then in here, we can do a render turbo_stream. And this can render one or more streams. So you can either do a private stream, which is what we're going to do here. But let's say you also had to render a public stream. You can just set this inside of an array and then do a public stream after it. And this is just a method that I haven't created yet. So in this case, we only need one, but you'll see what we're doing here in a second. So we're going to come down to this private section, and we're going to say def private stream. And here we need to render specifically to the tweet text right here. So when you click the link, we need to specifically say, go update the text for this user and this user only. And this is where the controller is really good, because the controller is only going to update for the current user. It's not going to update anything for everyone else unless you come in here and you do something like @tweets.broadcast, because that'll broadcast to the tweets channel. But instead what we'll do is we'll do a turbo_stream underscore stream dot replace. Now inside of this, it's going to take a couple things. The first is the thing you're targeting. So you can think of this as your likes button text is the thing you're going to be targeting. So we'll just set this equal to our private target, which we'll define up here in a second. So we'll just say private underscore target equals the empty string for now. After the private target, we then need to tell TurboStream the partial that we're going to be replacing the private target with. In this case, the partial is going to be this like button that we have all over the place. So we need to say tweets slash like, or I guess I called it private underscore button. The last thing we need is the locals. So these are just going to be your local variables that you're passing in. In this case, we'll do tweet, which is going to be at tweet. And then we need to pass in whatever we had in the index, which was the like status. So we'll pass in the like status. In this case, we can actually do, let me just move this down so it's a bit more readable. We can do a current underscore user dot liked question mark at tweet. So that means we probably need to come in here and we need a before action for authenticate underscore user exclamation mark, except for the %i index show. So this is all great in theory, but let's try to refresh the page and click like. Actually, this needs to be in the likes folder. So let's save that and refresh the page. There we go. Now, if we click on like, we'll see that we have our cable set up down here. And if I click on this, we'll see that we're inserting into likables and we're destroying from likables. The page isn't being refreshed, but nothing's actually happening here. So the text isn't changing. If I refresh the page, the text will change, but it doesn't change based on this. So whatever this is replacing to, it's not doing a very good job. That's because right now it's replacing to private target, which is the empty string. So we need to actually figure out what our target is going to be. There's two different ways to do this. One is you can just construct it yourself, which means we're going to have to change this to be double quotes. And we can say the target is going to be, let me full screen this. The target's going to be tweet underscore at tweet dot ID space private underscore likes, which means we have to create this. So to create this, we have to come into our private button and we have to wrap this in something so it knows what to replace. Now this can either be a div. So this could be a div that we do like this. And then we just set this to have an ID equal to whatever we just put in there. And then this has to be inside of some Ruby code like this. And we come over here and we do the same thing. But then this needs to also be inside of quotes. That's one way to handle this. The other thing we can do, instead of having tweet underscore ID, because we're in a view, we can do dom underscore ID, except this needs to also be in a template. Dom ID for the tweet, and that's going to give us tweet underscore whatever the ID number is. So it's going to give us the singular version of this tweet model underscore the number of the ID, and then the private likes. I believe inside of your tweets controller, you can do the same thing. You can use your DOM ID helper, DOM ID for tweet, and get rid of this. But then you have to include your helpers, I think, or you can just do helpers.domid. Now our private button is upset at the current user.liked method, user.rb liked. So let's come into our private button, full screen this. This needs a question mark. So we'll save this and refresh the page. Now if we click unlike, oops, our private stream needs to, inside of our tweets controller, at tweet. So we'll save that, refresh the page, click like, and now you can see that we're liking and unliking this without refreshing the page. So I can come down here, I can unlike that, like that one, etc., etc. This is where things start to get a little bit annoying if you're trying to make this work for yourself. So we can come over to localhost port 3000, and I'll actually do a sign in, which means I have to go to /users/sign-in. I'll sign in to john@doe.com with the password of password from our seeded database. If I click the like button, you'll notice that the counter doesn't get updated, the text doesn't change. I can refresh the page, and it gets updated in that sense. But every time I like it, I then have to refresh the page to get the like on the other page. And that's because we're only broadcasting this turbo stream replace locally. Because remember, there's two different parts to this turbo stream. The first is this turbo stream.replace, which replaces a tag like this. And this could also just as easily be, let me just grab this. This could just as easily be something like a turbo underscore frame underscore tag that has that. We do a do block, and we come down here and we do an end. This is going to give you the same result. If I come over here and refresh, you'll see it does the same thing. But this is fundamentally different than the other option that we have, which gets talked about a lot, which is the ability to do a turbo underscore stream underscore from. So I can do a turbo stream from tweets, for example, and you'll notice right away, my server is immediately killed. So why does the server have an issue? Well, you'll notice that all of this has a Redis problem. I had a couple comments on this, why I said to use Redis if you're using Turbo. It's because as soon as you try to stream from something, you need a way to push stuff to a server or to a database and to get stuff when there's been an update. And this is called a pub sub type of database. That's where Redis comes in. So usually when I do these tutorials, I have Redis running in the background. In this case, what I'll do is I'll hit Control-Shift-I in my VS Code, just to give you an example. I'll type Redis-server, which I have installed with like app install Redis or something. I'll then come over here and I'll start my server with a Rails S. Now, if I refresh the page, that works. And you can see here, successfully upgraded to NetSocket. And we're doing a turbo stream channel, which is transmitting from the subscription confirmation and it's now streaming from tweets. This means that anything we publish to this tweets channel will get sent to everyone listening to this tweets channel. Now, of course, we're not broadcasting this to the tweets channel. We're only doing this locally. So what we need to do is we need to keep this action local because no one else is going to have their text change for their like, but we need to have the like counter get updated globally when we do a local like. So how do we deal with that? Well, we come into, I believe, our user model where I did this? Yeah, I did this in the user model. So whenever a tweet is liked, I then also broadcast this somewhere. So in this case, I say I have a public target instead of the private one we've been using, which is equal to tweet underscore tweet.id, which is just like our DOM ID helper, underscore public underscore likes. And I'm just doing it like this so that you can see specifically what this is doing. Of course, I have this weird yellow squiggly mark. But if we now do a broadcast replace later to some target underscore public or public underscore likes, which is our channel, we can then do a target, which is going to be our public target. So what's the difference here? You might see some people just use one of these. They might just have these quotes, comma, and then a partial, which is going to be our likes / like underscore count. And then a locals, which is just the tweet. What you might see some people do is omit this target. So this is just going to broadcast to the public channel. And then I think it just infers that the public likes is also the name of the target. In some cases, you might see it broadcast to, let's say, tweets. And then it'll say, okay, I'm broadcasting to tweets. I'm updating tweet number 5. So just go to tweet underscore 5 and replace that one. Here, though, our target is this tweet underscore tweet ID underscore public underscore likes. So it's a more specific target than just the tweet ID because it's specific to this public likes counter. Now, if we save this, come over here and refresh and like and unlike, you'll see that my counter is now updating. It's updating because one thing to note is the counter here is updating, but it's not updating on both. Why is that? Well, in here, we're broadcasting a replace later to public likes, the channel. We're also broadcasting it to this target. Do either of these exist yet? Well, clearly inside of our like count, we went pretty soft, which means we don't have anything in there. So we actually need to take this public target, come into our like counter. I'll just put this up here for right now. I'll actually do it like this so we get some syntax highlighting. But what we want to do, just like in our private button with this turbo frame tag, we want to create a turbo frame tag in here where we put in this target. So we'll just replace this. And we can, of course, replace this with just our dom_ID for the tweet. We can do it like that. And we can do a %end. And we can clean this up. This is going to be the same thing as this. And now if we come over here and we refresh both of these pages, you'll see that it's still not updating. Well, remember, inside of our user.rb, we had a public target that we just created, but we're also broadcasting to this public likes channel. And I don't remember setting up a channel. So let's come over to our index.html.erb. And in here, instead of doing turbo stream from the tweets, let's do a turbo stream from the public_likes channel, just like we have in the user model. Let's refresh the page. And now you'll see that the number is changing. The other thing you'll notice is that the like text isn't changing for every user because that's still happening in the controller. We're not broadcasting that part to everyone. And on that note, if you don't want to have your Redis server running all the time, because I just realized I still do, you can do Redis-server space --Daemonize for daemonize, and then just the word yes. And that'll just run it in the background, which is how you usually have it running. But now if we refresh the page, we come in here and I stopped the server to do the Redis as Daemonized, so it broke everything. If we come in here and we just start liking random tweets and unliking random tweets, you'll see that this update happens for everyone. One thing to note though, if I can open up a third window, so I'll come over here, is our not logged in user can't do anything right now because we're using this current user.liked thing inside of our tweets.each. So if you're not logged in, you might want a different view. Now, of course, you could create this a little bit better to make sure it works like that. But let's say you need it to be different depending on if you're logged in or not. The first thing to note is that this will work regardless of whether we're the current user or not, because we're streaming from a hard-coded channel. But we can actually change this to render a different partial depending on if we're logged in or not. To do this inside of our tweets.each, I'll just full screen this. We can do a if current user. And if we are the current user, we'll render one tweet, else we'll render a different one. Now we want to grab this show tweet and just put this inside of our partial. So we'll come over to our tweet.html.erb and below the body, we'll do the show. So now if we try to do this, we won't have anything displaying. So we have a private tweet up here that works just fine, but we want the public one to also work. To do that, what we want to do, because we're just trying to show two different sides of this, is we can come into our index.html and we can say tweets. And instead of rendering just a tweet, we'll render a private _tweet, which means we'll have to change this partial here to be _private_tweet.html.erb. And now everything should work the same. But now let's create another new file and we'll name this one public _tweet.html.erb. And then here we'll grab the private tweet, paste it into the public. And you'll see this already comes from Rails with a DOM ID of the tweet, but we actually don't want a like button here. You could, of course, render a link to like a thing to like the thing. But instead what we'll do is we'll grab both of these and we'll just extract this out into a render for the tweet or tweet/body. And then we'll just pass in a tweet of tweet. And then we can create a new file here with a _body.html.erb. We'll paste this in and save it. We can come out here. And then above this, we can do a render for the likes/like_count, where we pass in a tweet of the tweet. So the reason why we did it like this inside of our private tweet, of course, is because we wanted the ability to render this in multiple places, or sorry, inside of our private button. Now we can render the like counter in here inside of our like button, and we can render it inside of our public tweet like this. Because neither one relies on the current user, we'll be good to go. If we now try to refresh, nothing will happen, and nothing will happen in here because we have to come into our index and we have to actually render this. So let's come in here. Let's do, oops, not here. Let's do it here. Inside of our current user check, we'll do a render for the tweets/public_tweet, and we'll do tweet:tweet. Now, if we refresh, you'll see that this one has the likes showing up as well as the body, and these still have the like buttons. If we now click like on this one, it'll update the like counter for the other two. This will also update it. So the person that's not logged in gets the same user experience as everyone else without it being forced to do a current user check inside of our partials. We now have the likes updating for everyone, which is a good thing. We can probably change this from a like button actually. So we'll come in here, we'll change this from a button to be a link to, and at the end here, we can change this to be a post request by doing data turbo_method : post. And we can refresh, and now it'll be a link again, and it'll work just like before, where hopefully the counter gets updated for everyone. Let me just refresh to make sure. It looks like it's working. But okay, that is how we do the likes here. Now, how do we do the creation of a new tweet? This is where things start to get a little bit tricky. Now, the only way this works is by having things set up the way we have them here. Otherwise, you'll very quickly run into an issue. So if we come into our tweet.rb, and I full screen this, we can make sure that anytime we create a tweet, so say after _create_commit do, we'll do a broadcast_new_tweet, which we still have to define here. So let's come down here and let's create this. So we'll say def broadcast new tweet. And then we'll do the same thing we did previously with our broadcast in here for the broadcast replace later. But instead, we want to do a broadcast prepend. I should point out, you can also do prepend to or replace to. Doing this is just creating a background job, which causes it to be a bit more smooth because you don't have to handle all the resources up front. But we can take this broadcast prepend to, and we can prepend this to the public tweets channel, which we have to create. Our target will stay public tweets. Our partial will actually be tweets/public tweet, and our tweet will just be ourself. So we can do this, we can save it. We then need to create this public tweets channel. So let's come down to our index and make sure we're streaming from it. So we have our public likes. Let's also do a turbo stream from the public tweets. We can save this. And now if we try to do the same thing we did previously, let's say I create one. Oops, I forgot to put this in quotes. So let's come back to our tweet.rb. Full screen this. This needs to be in quotes. There we go. Okay, created a new tweet. Let me make sure I have all these windows open and I refresh them all. I also make sure I refresh this one. There we go. So if I click create a new tweet, see that nothing happens here. Well, if we come over, we should see a whole bunch of stuff was streamed to that channel, but for some reason, nothing's appearing. Well, if we come in here, our target for this was the public tweets, which if we come into our index, doesn't exist anywhere because we don't have that public tweets turbo frame tag. Remember, initially the way this works is you stream from tweets, which matches this ID right here. So whenever you do a change in your tweet.rb and it calls this broadcast and it broadcasts it to like @tweets or whatever, it then grabs that same target as that name. Here it's trying to do this because we have public tweets specifically as the target, but this still says tweets. So instead, let's grab this public tweets, paste it in here, or if we want to be clearer, we can just say this is going to be the tweets underscore channel, which is equal to public tweets in quotes. You can then turbo stream from that variable, and we can set our ID in here to be that variable. Oops, I hit the wrong button. We can close this. Alternatively, we could do a content tag. So we could say, this is content underscore for a div with an ID of tweets channel. Come down here and replace this one with a end tag. Get rid of this and we would be good to go. We could also do a turbo frame for, of course, but let's leave it as a content for just to show you different ways of doing things. Now, if we refresh the page, nothing appears because this should actually be a content tag, not a content for. My brain's somewhere else. So now if we try to like a tweet, the like still updates. If we try to create a tweet, a new tweet creates a new tweet. Perfect. We have a tweet here. We have a tweet here. We have a tweet here. Looks good. This looks perfect. And how do we like this tweet? Well, can't just render a public tweet. We can't just render a private tweet, because if we render a private tweet with a link, then this will have a link and it'll be different. So instead, what we have to do is we have to do a current user check. So to fix this specifically, for our tweets channel right here, instead of just doing public tweets, what we want to do is we want to check, are we the current underscore user? If we are, then we want to stream to private underscore tweets. Else we want to stream to public tweets. That'll change it for the turbo stream from and for the content tag. Now, of course, we don't change it inside of our tweet.rb. But because we're only rendering public tweets if we're not signed in, that means we can also only render private tweets if we are signed in which case we can tab this over, change this to be private underscore tweets. And the beauty of this is private underscore tweet. We don't have to check for current user in our model, which is sort of a taboo. Instead, we can just say the like status, which we have to pass in, which would be current underscore user dot liked underscore or liked question mark tweet or whatever, or self. Instead of doing that or doing some other weird logic, this can actually just be false by default because you can't create a tweet and like it at the same time. We know it's not going to be liked by default with how we set this up. So we can refresh the page, come in here and say, hello, everyone, create the tweet. And it creates the tweet only for the not signed in client still. So why does it not like the not signed in client? Come over to our terminal. Hopefully we can find it. I might have to zoom out a bit. If I scroll up high enough, we get this error. Make sure that your application is loading Devise and Warden as expected and that the Warden Manager middleware is present in your middleware stack. Well, that error means that somewhere in our code, which I think is in our private button, we're doing some weird logic where we're checking if the user has liked something. We can't do that, otherwise Warden isn't happy with us. So instead, let's change this to be the like underscore status that we've been passing in this whole time. Now let me try to refresh the page. Let me move this one over and do this or something. Refresh the page, refresh the page, refresh the page. Now let me try to say hello world, create tweet. And now you can see that this one, and this one all have the things rendered that they need. So this one can like the tweet, it updates this one and this one. This one can like the tweet, it updates that one. The only thing we really need to change now is inside of our public tweet, we have this render tweets body. Let me full screen it. So inside of our private tweet, we just want to render that same thing. And now if we refresh the page, we should be good to go. So I should be able to say, hi everyone, create the tweet, and hi everyone appears, and I can like it with this one, I can like it with this one, and everything's good to go. Now, what happens if we try to, let's say, edit this? Or maybe we can try to create one from the console. That might be a good idea. So I'm just gonna move this over here, and inside of my console here, I'm gonna type Rails C. And then inside of here, I'm just gonna do a tweet.create with a body of from the console, and then a user of user.find1, I guess, We'll try that. And you can see from the console appears, from the console appears, and from the console appears. The not logged in one looks right, the other two look right, and it still works just fine. It's because it's all running through the model. And the only thing that ever changes from the client's perspective is when I click the actual button and the controller broadcasts the local change. But now what happens if I want to edit one of these? Well, we don't have the logic to edit one of these inside of our tweet.rb because we're only broadcasting on an after create commit. So how do you do the edit and how do you do the destroys? Well, these are actually pretty easy. We can just copy this, paste it down, paste it down. We can change this one to say update. And I'll just leave the destroy one commented out for now. And we'll broadcast a updated underscore tweet. We can grab this and come down here. Actually, we can just grab this whole thing, paste it down here, and we'll say broadcast the updated tweet. And instead of doing a broadcast prepend, let's do a broadcast replace to and save this, exit out of this. We can now come over here, refresh, refresh, refresh. Let's also change the sort order real quick just to make this a bit easier to work with. So let's come into tweets controller, scroll up to the top. We'll say tweet.all dot, we'll say, dot includes the likables dot reverse. And then we can come back to our, wherever we just were, our tweet.rb. And now let me refresh all of these. It doesn't have the method reverse because I didn't do dot reverse. I did comma reverse. There we go. Now let me refresh, refresh, refresh. So that handles the this section. So let me try to edit this from the console. So let me show this tweet, which is going to break because it doesn't have the tweets underscore tweet anymore. So let's come into the tweets show page. Instead of rendering at tweet, let's come into the index here where we did both of these. We'll come back to our show page and we'll just say, if we're the current user, render the private tweet, which has a tweet and the like status. And if we're not the current user, render the public tweet. Get out of here, refresh the page. We do need to change this to be at tweet, at tweet, at tweet. I think that fixes everything. Refresh. Okay. So now if we try to edit this tweet, I'll click edit. Instead of saying from the console, I'll say I updated this from the show page. Look at me go. I'll click update. You'll notice that I did a broadcast replace to that replaced the entire body of everything we just did. So what happened? Well, if we come into our tweet.rb and we full screen this and we scroll down, you'll notice we have a replace to the public tweets and the private tweets, but we're actually broadcasting this replace to the public tweets and the private tweets channel. Instead of doing that, we need to broadcast this to the tweet underscore ID, or I guess self.id. And we need this to be double quotes. So let me do that. And that is going to be the same target down here. So let me just set a shared target equal to this. And then we can just do a shared target and a shared target. So that's going to be a specific tweet. So I could even say this is like the shared tweet target or the shared target tweet. Save that and get rid of this last part here. Now, if we try to do this, it's going to try to replace this DOM ID, which if we come into our private tweet, our DOM ID is right here. And if we come into our public tweet, our DOM ID is right here. But it won't get confused because it's only rendering one or the other, not both. So now if we come out here and we refresh, 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 and of course it doesn't get rid of everything. But if we now try to edit this again and say, this time I targeted the tweet specifically, click update, you'll see it changes it here, changes it here. And of course it changes it here, but that's just a redirect, so that's really not fair. I just refreshed the page, but if I edit this again and I click update, one thing you'll notice is this one is right, but this one actually got because we're replacing it for everyone, it didn't replace the like with the specific like that it should have. So our like text here on john@doe.com is actually incorrect. What that means is that instead of broadcasting to, let me full screen this, a shared private tweets, this actually needs to broadcast to a specific private tweets. If we come into our tweets index, we have our turbo stream from the tweets channel and from our public likes channel. We also need to do a turbo stream from turbo_stream_from, and we're going to broadcast, or we're going to stream from the @user_GID, which we made super early on in the video inside of our tweets controller, this user GID. We need to do this user GID, comma, private_likes. Let me close this off. This is just going to generate the user GID space, the word private likes. So it's just like if you had this inside of a string here, like this, and you had a space between them. It's just a bit more of an organized way to do it. So that will do the stream from. We now need to grab this, and we need to do the same thing inside of our tweet. We'll come in here, and instead of doing the replace to and having this shared target tweet, we now need to have a private target channel equal to this. I'm actually going to put all of this in quotes, and I'm going to construct it the same way as we did outside. And then instead of broadcasting this to the private tweets, we'll broadcast this to the private target channel. Now we'll exit out of this and refresh. Now I'll click edit, update, and now you'll see that the unlike doesn't change here. That's because we're streaming to a very specific channel now. But okay, that takes care of editing and that takes care of creating. What about if you want to delete one of these? If you want to delete one of these, this is actually the easiest part. So we just say broadcast_destroy_tweet, and let me copy this. We just come up here, we uncomment this. We change this create to a destroy. So after we destroy commit, broadcast destroy tweet. My formatter is trying to help, which is going about as well as you would expect. After you do your destroy, we then want to broadcast_remove_to the public_tweets. And we just want to do the target, which is the tweet_ID. We then want to do a broadcast remove to the, and this can actually just be private tweets, not likes. And again, we want the target here to be the tweet with a target ID. Save that. Now let's come over to here. Oops, over to here. Open up all of these, refresh the pages. And I'm going to click destroy on our targeted tweet. And you can see it disappears from all of the pages. Okay, that is going to do it for this Turbo crash course. Hopefully you learned something from this. This is sort of what I plan on using further on in the real-time chat application that we have running over on Heroku. Basically, we needed specific channels for liking and unliking stuff and some of those features, but I didn't know how to make it work. Pretty much all the material has been kind of not great. But this should at least allow us inside of like our general chat room to do some more cool stuff that everyone can see. If you're interested in how this tutorial series is going, or you want to create this project yourself with like user statuses, attachments, messages, etc., like I can show the attachments right now, you can find that tutorial on the screen right now.